So what you gonna do, brother? We about to run wild with a style like no other. So somebody call Brodus Clay mother and tell her Richard runs on the men like Ed Lover and Doc Dre. What Scott say, what they hang on every word like it's something that the Rock say. No JR, but they talking wrestling. We bring the noise with the boys, so we Dalton Castling. So masculine, oozing machismo, mutton chop shop, Gran Turismo. No free throws, snarl hoops and heels. It's D-Bras retirement, give you the super feels. Straight shoot, it's real. Drop a pipe bomb, get ready to bull like the Rock's right arm. So stay calm, tranquilo, I'll go Naito and give him Destino. And we know that you chumps ain't ready for the heartbreak runs and the Cuban Genetti. They drop it heavy, tag team it like Teddy. Long go strong with the heat like Eddie. So steady like when Taker walked the tightrope. Spaz like Taz with the mic and a tight choke. Dirtiest player in the game with the eye poke. 1988 Macho Man on a line of coke. These other cats are a waste, they boring. Illegitimate sons like Jason Jordan. And Richard Runz never give him respect unless they going on air with a broken frickin' neck. So bounce like Papa Pump's pecs. Every time they get down, they bound to catch wreck. Y'all don't know nada. They the Okadas, you're the Washington Generals, they the Globetrotters. A whole lot of podcasts in the scene, but Richard Runz running wild is the cast of your dreams. So it seems these two is too sweet. Bullet Club pulling up with schemes to delete. So retreat, we steal, we cheat, but I never lie, I swear on these beats. And these two got some styles for you, but what you gonna do when they run wild on you?
Oh, hell yeah. It's the Big Dog Red Titus. And you're listening to the Running Wild podcast. Because if you're trying to run wild, this is the place to do it.
Do you want to let everyone know that you get it? Do you not want to be a Melvin? Well, then listen to the Running Wild podcast. And if you don't, you know what you are.
I'm the last real man, Silas Young. And if you're any kind of man, you'll be listening to the Running Wild podcast.
Hi guys, this is Mandy Leon, and you're listening to the Running Wild podcast.
This is Sam Adonis, El Juro de las Chicas de CMLL, and you are listening to the Running Wild podcast.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Running Wild Podcast. I'm your co-host Rich, alongside me as always, my co-host Runz.
Yes, sir.
All right, we got a big episode going up. We were talking about Ring of Honor's Honor Rising events over in Japan, the joint event with New Japan. And we'll also be covering Elimination Chamber a little bit earlier, as I'll be flying down to Mexico. So we're going to be altering our schedule for the next couple of days. And, of course, don't worry, because we'll return with an excellent recap of Mexico podcast that you guys will enjoy. And this episode also will be welcoming High Spots' Rob Viper, who got a chance to sit down with him, and we talked about just really professional wrestling and how he became a fan of CMLL. As I wanted to know a little bit more before we went down there. It was a really fun chat where we didn't really complain about wrestling. We just talked about why we're fans. So that's something that's rare, I think, on a lot of podcasts. So make sure you guys sit tight. That'll be towards the end of the episode. All right, so let's just dive right in, right to the New Japan shows, the Honor Rising shows. It's a 2-night event. Which night are you most looking forward to?
Is that a trick question?
All right, is there a match that jumps out at you from the weekend that you're most excited about?
Well, I mean, like night 2 is probably the better night, right? You have the tag match with Cody and Marty against Kenny and Ibushi, and Castle against Beretta. Both should be really good. But on that same card, you also have Goto against the Beer City Bruiser, which, should not be on the card at all. So, I don't know. They both have their ups and downs.
So I'm looking at. I think the match you're talking to, the Beer City Bruiser versus Goto, I think it's night 1. I think night 1 is we have Omega, Ibushi, and Owens versus Cody, Page, and Skrull. Then we have Goto versus Beer City Bruiser, Castle, Lethal, and somebody I can't identify because I'm looking at pictures, versus Jay White and the Best Friends. And then you have Kushida.
It's Ryusuke Taguchi.
I think you're right. That might be right. Yeah, that sounds like it. I don't recognize the face.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm happy to see Jay White again. Especially with the Ring of Honor guys. Now that he's got changed. It's like when Kamatachi went back to New Japan, reinvented himself, and then was facing off against Ring of Honor talent. That's kind of cool. And the night one, I think the match that I'm most looking forward to is Flip Gordon versus Takahashi versus Kishida. I mean, that just sounds like a killer triple threat right there. And I think they're going to do some insane stuff.
Oh yeah, this is Flip's debut in Japan, so I'm sure he'll be going all out.
Yeah, man, and Takahashi is crazy, and Kushida is Kushida, so I think that's going to be a really fun match. Then you're going to have Juice Robinson and Finlay versus the Young Bucks. So I'm not sure if Finlay and Robinson have teamed up before like this, but I'm looking forward to this because Matt's selling the back injury has been a story lately, so I want to see how that plays into it. And then you have, one of your crazy six-man matches. You have Liger and Delirious and Cheeseburger versus the Gorillas of Destiny. So I think that's going to be, there are some spots here that look fun. I think that one of the things they do with the Honor Rising shows, and I know that you're against it a little bit, but, they put somebody like Beer City Bruiser in a spot against Goto, and I believe last year we had Taylor during the war, I think there was a Global Wars tour this year. You had Taylor versus Goto, and last year I believe you had Martinez versus Goto. So Goto's a big deal, and if the Ring of Honor talent, you figure, especially if it's for the title, we're probably not going to see a title change. But I think that if you have a strong showing over there, that's a good look for these guys. And look at Martinez. I mean, Martinez, off the strength of a good appearance against Goto, then ended up getting built up into a title contender.
It's not a bad thing to put guys in that spot, without question. However, somebody like the Beer City Bruiser is irrelevant in Ring of Honor, and there's no need for him. There's no spot for it. There's just, it's a waste. This is an important title that clearly he is not going to win. And yes,
never say never.
Spot, I get it, blah, blah, blah. But it's just, it is a waste. There is, the Beer City Bruiser just got in the tag team. He's not a singles guy in Ring of Honor. At the moment, he's not going to be the champion. He's not going to be any type of champion, hopefully, in my opinion. I don't know, man. It's just a waste.
All right. Well, I mean, I think listeners of the show know that I have a soft spot for the Beer City Bruiser. He's an old school,
Right. That's fine. Like, there is an undercard comedy-ish spot for him, but putting him against one of the most physical guys for the never openweight title is just dumb. Like, you're going to Japan, build stars. Don't waste these spots.
All right, I mean, I don't know. I'm just thinking of it as like a bad news Brown, man. That guy was like a badass, and he could have been. He's kind of like the same kind of character. So,
no, Bad News Brown wasn't a sloppy guy who walked around with a keg.
Hey, listen, he's got a beer with a beer cozy now, so he's not always walking around with a keg. I don't know. I think this is maybe one of those times where you make him a little bit more serious because he faces Goto, and then that can go back to the product. It's giving guys a chance. But we'll agree to disagree. Here's what we'll do: we'll watch the match, and next week when we talk about it, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised.
No.
You're going to have to eat your words. I'm going to play what you just said over after you say, "Wow, I was wrong. That match was really good."
Nope, because it is a dumb match. It's a dumb spot. It's a waste.
All right, second night. We're going to have the main's going to be Omega and Ibushi against Cody and Skrull. We were talking about this off air. What are your thoughts?
On the actual match, or?
Yeah, I mean, you were...
It being the main event.
Well, I guess both.
I get why it's the main event, and the Bullet Club stuff is its own main event. It's its own storyline. Like that's great. I'm into it as much as anything. But Dalton Castle is your world champion. Cody's not. Omega is not. So he should be the main event. Him against Beretta will be a good match. And it's a time in Japan where people like Dalton Castle, Beretta's been getting over. Use Dalton Castle as your Ring of Honor champion and get him over. Get him to a bigger level. Let him main event the Tokyo Dome or Korakuen Hall or wherever you are. It makes a star for Ring of Honor. It makes a star in Japan, and it makes sense. But for some reason, they're not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I seriously could see this match in the main the title match as the main event. I mean, Trent's a heavyweight now, so things are very different with him over there.
They announced the card though. Like, it's not the main event.
Yeah, it doesn't. The Bullet Club stuff is top dog there right now, and I mean, I don't know.
And that's all fine, but like there are two different Bullet Club storylines like going on in New Japan and Ring of Honor. Like they're not the same thing right now. So I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, even the Guerrillas of Destiny now have like their own, basically like being the elite knockoff type show, where they're doing their stuff, and they don't talk about the other guys. So I don't know. I think you're right. You could have made Castle and Beretta the main event, and you still get the draw because people will want to see that match with the the lovers, the Golden Lovers together. But I don't think it has to be the main event spot. I just don't. I wonder if it's one of those things where if that match goes on second to last and it brings the house down, now you have Castle and Beretta next, and maybe the crowd's a little tired from it.
Let that match open the show. Like you can do a lot of things, but I just think putting your world champion in the main event says a lot, and not putting him there says more. And it's confusing. It's puzzling. Like you're making a star out of Dalton Castle, and on the free video on demand, he's buried early on the show, and now he hasn't really been defending the title. He hasn't been having these meaningful matches, and it's kind of just like, well, what was the point of giving him the title at Final Battle, at your big show? You had this whole big thing set up for him to succeed, and now it's kind of just floundering.
I mean, I think it's a little early to say that it's floundering, but I don't think it's being put in a position of strength.
Right, it hasn't sunk yet, but it's floundering. It's not succeeding for sure, and it makes no sense because everybody loves Dalton Castle, and he is very good. And I'm fine with him as the champion. I want to see him wrestle, but they're not putting him in that position. And it's very similar to like when CM Punk was the champion in WWE, and he was just buried on the card. His storylines were kind of meaningless. He wasn't involved in important things, and eventually that doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I will say that like the first title defense that he has was on TV this week. And it was against Punishment Martinez, and they had a nice build for a couple of weeks where Martinez came out and attacked him right after Castle celebrated with the title. The first night he came out, and they kind of had some interaction leading up to it, and they had some really good video packages for Martinez. I mean, they had one where he was talking about how he grew up in the streets and things were tough as he's holding like skulls like in a creepy room. So I was just like, that's weird. Like, just because you grew up on the mean streets doesn't mean you start holding skulls. But then the match was good. The only thing that was a little weird for me is so Castle ends up winning because he reverses. Martinez is going for the Psycho Driver, I believe, and he kind of like reverses into basically a cradle, an inside small package or something like that, cradle pin. And the story told was like that he out wrestled Martinez because Martinez was so much bigger and stronger that, he outsmarted him in the end. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's a Supercard last year, Castle faced off against Daniels and won. Lost to a kind of roll-up type move where, Daniels outsmarted him at the end. And just for a first defense, that's not my favorite look. I get you're saying that he's a better wrestler, he's a real wrestler where Martinez is a bruiser or whatever type thing, and that Castle kind of out-wrestled him at the end. But it's the first defense. I would have liked it to see him a little bit stronger. I'd love to see him hit the bangerang on Martinez. Martinez is a big dude. That would have been a good look, and made him look a little stronger, especially when you're doing, I think, a TV world title match. Not to be confused with the television title, but a world title match on television. I think you should make your champion look a little bit stronger if you're not going to put it on pay-per-view.
Right. I get it. You want to keep Martinez strong, and he's a monster, et cetera, et cetera. Well, then don't book that match as his first defense. And if you do, then you got to give Castle a strong win instead of he's not a Weasley heel. He shouldn't be squeaking out that win. And I get it. I understand the logic behind it. But as your first defense, you don't, like you said, you don't want to see that. And I don't know. It just goes hand in hand with what we were just saying, as how they're not doing any justice by Dalton Castle. It impacts their title. He's their world champion, and it's kind of buried on the card.
I'm trying to think, aside. So essentially, they have the Honor Rising shows, and then there's nothing until. Well, not nothing. We're not that far away, but we have Manhattan Mayhem is the third. Is actually the next show first. Okay. We'll have Supercard. Well, I'm sorry, Manhattan Mayhem. And then we'll have the 16th anniversary, which will be a week later, and then Supercards in April. So if you're talking about really big shows, you're talking about right now 3 shows. We know that it's going to be Lethal versus Castle at the 16th anniversary. So no matter what happens at Manhattan Mayhem, you figure it's either not going to be a title defense, or it's going to be somebody that he's going to win. Last year, I think they tried to make it seem like it could be that. Let me think. Yeah, they tried to make it seem like Bobby Fish could walk away with the title. They were teasing some stuff between Fish and Daniels. Instead of Cole versus Daniels for the anniversary. But I'm not right now. We're a couple weeks out, and I don't think they're going to be building that. So I don't even think there's going to be a title defense in Manhattan Mayhem, which I guess also again goes back to the point you're making. Why wouldn't he not be defending the title at the show?
And if he's in a title match, you're figuring it's not even going to be the main event, right? So. It's very confusing, as fans of Castle and fans of Ring of Honor, you want to see him in important positions, and it's unfortunate that right now he's not getting that chance. And I understand the Bullet Club is a big thing right now, but so is your world title. And when the Bullet Club thing is all said and done, you're still going to have your world title, and you're still going to have Dalton Castle, and they both might be in a worse off spot than they were before.
I can't disagree with you there. All right. So any last word on the Honor Rising shows, or you want to move on to WWE this week?
No, yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing how the shows come across and what these guys do. They should be enjoyable shows, but I just wish the cards were a little stronger for Ring of Honor's sake.
I guess I'll say this. It feels. I wouldn't say that they're not stronger. I think that for me, they're not. They're like what you've said before. At the end of the 2 shows, nothing's going to be different.
Right. It's just another show, and I don't think you should do that when you're going to Japan to put on a show. These shows should be important, and you're spending all of this money flying guys out to Japan and putting on these big shows. They should have some significance for your company. Instead of just putting on a show in Japan, you should be wanting to build the Ring of Honor fan base in Japan and build up these Ring of Honor names in Japan. And, I don't think they're doing themselves any favors, and that's unfortunate.
Fair enough. I can't really disagree there. I mean, I think part of it's also that these shows are always broadcast on New Japan. They're not broadcast on Ring of Honor. So I'm not sure if that's part of it. I mean, they're saying the Honor Club is imminent, is like the latest article, but I know they're working on getting that stuff kind of squared away and getting all their ducks in a line for that. So I don't think these shows are going to be on that. If I remember even last year, I don't believe the Honor Rising shows even come up on the ROH feed. They weren't like VODs available. They were just on New Japan. So I think I had to log into New Japan to watch them. So, I think that might be part of it.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
All right, so now we have Monday Night Raw.
I mean, we might as well just talk about the Chamber.
I mean, it's really they had a loser enters the Chamber match first, and you had Cena versus Miz, and predictably, see, I actually thought, although it says predictably, Cena wins, I actually thought that Cena could possibly lose, and there would be a reason why he would be, be eliminated. And you could say, okay, so well, John, he came in first, and that ends up being the reason why he loses. I mean, I don't know.
Right. This would have made sense to build a story arc for Cena, and that was another thing that was like John Cena on Raw was saying like, oh, if I don't win this, then I'm not going to have a WrestleMania match. Like, who in the world believes that John Cena is not going to be on WrestleMania if he doesn't win the Elimination Chamber? So like,
all right.
While I get the, he's getting older and these young guys are catching up with him. I get that and I appreciate that story, but it's a little extreme to try to make me believe that John Cena is going to be left off WrestleMania.
I mean, I kind of like I get what you're saying because, if you step back and look at it, you're like, there's no way Cena's not going to be there. But at the same time, I kind of like this idea that he feels like he needs to fight his way onto the card. I do like that.
Right. And I agree with you. I like the story of the reality, of like this guy's getting up there and he's been doing right by a lot of these young guys and having good matches and putting guys over, etc. So that sort of thing is great, and it helps his character. But, again, it's just a little like, okay, that's too far. Maybe he's not going to, have him say, he wants to be the main event. Don't have him say, I'm not going to be on the card.
I'm going to be on the pre-show if I don't win this match.
Yeah. Okay, John Cena is going to be left off WrestleMania. Good luck with that one.
I'd love to see Cena on the pre-show. That would be kind of hilarious.
It would be, yeah. The pre-show would be the most important it's ever been.
Yeah, if he's on the kickoff, then I don't even think they call it the kickoff anymore. They're just like, this is the event.
WrestleMania starts at 3 o'clock.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's gonna start so late. Okay,
WrestleMania starts at 6:48, and that's when John Cena has his match. The other 2 hours is all pre-show, but 6:48. John Cena wrestles, that's for sure.
Here's a sidebar that you're probably going to call me crazy for. So they're talking about the fact that WrestleMania might be in Jersey again next year at the MetLife Stadium, and there's part of me that's like, maybe we should just get really good food and beer and just sit at home. There's a part of me that doesn't know if I can go. It's so long.
It is an extremely long amount of time.
This is when I know I'm old. We've gone to Phoenix. I've been to Detroit, accidentally Canada, and now I'm like, I don't know, man. It's such a long show. I might have to stay home. Like, but
However, it is at least like an 8-hour commitment, and that is a long day.
hopefully, I won't lock my keys in my car this year. But
2-hour pre-show, 4-hour WrestleMania at least. At least an hour or two drive both ways. So, that's a rough day.
like, I almost think I want to get a luxury box, and then I'm like, why don't I just watch it in my room at home? Like, that's my room is basically a luxury box.
Getting a suite is literally, you might as well just stay home.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in a suite. Actually, I got a chance to be in a suite at the Barclays for Monday Night Raw, and it was essentially the equivalent of being in my room in a recliner, except there was some free food.
So you're just watching the show on TV. Every once in a while, you can open a window and hear it.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty much it.
You had... I thought the Bayley-Sasha Banks match was good, though.
Yeah, sure.
Then... I guess the other things...
we might as well talk about the Chamber and go through this stuff as we're talking about the card.
All right. So I guess the last thing we'll say before we jump into Chamber is that we just need to talk about the qualifier, right? And they added people to it. I mean, we only have to talk about it in that essentially it was always going to be Finn Balor. I don't know why. I think last week I said Apollo Crews and you laughed at me mercilessly.
So, like, they tweeted out or they sent out promotion, like, the week of or the day of, saying that Finn Balor was the sixth man. And so, obviously, they were like, oh, well, we can't have that. We got to switch things up, and we'll just have a double pin. And when they had the double pin, I was like, oh, joy. Now we're going to have Balor against Rollins next week to qualify. But... then they just announced, no, never mind. It's okay. We're just going to have them both in the Chamber. So, okay. Now the Chamber has 7 people. Joy.
How does that even work?
Are we going to start with a triple threat?
Yeah.
That would make sense and I guess be different and cool. But, it just seems like this was done because they needed something to come from it down the line. And that's okay. But, it's a little easier to swallow when there's a reason for it rather than like a reason coming out of it, like if there's rumors that Seth against Angle could be a WrestleMania thing. So like if that's something that's coming out of this is something with Seth and Angle, then okay. But
yeah, man, I'm thinking. So you say that it's probably going to start with the triple threat, and then my immediate thought was, what if they have like a extra chamber on top of the cage, and Balor's just in full demon gear, crawling around in the chamber, and then it opens and he just drops onto somebody. Like that would be the most epic thing I've ever seen.
If this was like a Spider-Man movie,
that would be amazing.
Then that's brilliant. But this is real life. And
hey, where are you going?
Not sure. Yeah,
I gotcha. 5 minutes of playtime.
It would be like it's a cool idea, and it would help Balor's character, but that's just not going to happen.
See, it would have been great if Elias was in the match, and then he basically just made believe he was Bonesaw from Spider-Man and just started yelling at somebody. I would super pop for that
Elias is ready.
Oh my god, I would lose my mind. All right, so after all this talk about who's going to be in the chamber, is there any chance that anybody but Roman Reigns wins?
No. No.
Right? Like
no. There is none. Do I mind? I can't say that I mind either. I don't know. Roman against Brock is a cool thing. It's a WrestleMania match. It is what it is,
Yeah, I mean that's what we've been leading to, right? I mean, at this point I kind of want to see it, which is weird, but I do. I just it's played its course. I'm done with Brock being champion. I just really don't care for it anymore. It's kind of the same formula.
Right, and it's the two guys to beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Like, that's kind of a cool thing, right? To have the only two to beat the guy at the show. Now they're going to fight at the show. And I think this time it has the proper build and it has the proper history behind it for it to be a memorable match. And like you said, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So, you know, the Chamber will be fun. It's guys there, and you know, whether they win or lose, anything of that nature, seeing Elias against Cena in a Chamber is a cool thing. So that's good spots for those guys, and it'll help them in the long run.
Yeah, no, I have to agree. I think the best finish obviously would be Braun grabs grappling hook, pulls down the Chamber, and then if somehow Reigns gets the pinfall. How do you eliminate this guy?
Right, I was just going to say, I wonder how he, I'm going to say like a spear through the cage or something.
It's got to
like
be something
maybe
nuts.
He just gets beat up by all six people, you know, because, I don't know, this guy really doesn't lose. And he only loses to the top guys, so we'll see.
I really just want to see him do something. Just like absolute, I want him to like rip.
He's gonna throw somebody.
Throw a pod,
like
take the pod off. Something insane. Just I don't know. I want to see him continue to do absolutely superhuman feats. But yeah, I don't think he wins. I think it's definitely Roman.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, they have guys in the match that could surprise us, but I don't think that happens here.
I think the most exciting moment of the night will probably be Ronda Rousey signing officially with WWE at Elimination Chamber.
Sure.
Okay, so it's a contract signing, so something has to happen, right?
Like, I guess.
Is this where we find out who she ends up facing at Mania?
Right. And from everything that's been rumored this week, is it's going to be the mixed tag. So I don't. That's kind of strange to me, because it sets up Asuka and Charlotte, it sets up Nia and Alexa somehow, and then it sets up Rousey and someone against Triple H and Steph. That could be Braun, that could be Shane, I don't know. So, I mean, I guess that kind of matters.
Is there any chance that they've just done some great long-term booking and it's Rock?
Well, that's the goal. But from what I've seen, his movie schedule and like the insurance from his movies is too much, where he won't be able to really wrestle. So I think that was the goal, and that still is. And if it's possible, I'm sure, you know, it'll happen, but I'm not sure that's likely.
I'm looking forward to see where they're going with this. I think they're getting a lot of mainstream buzz. And listen, I've been watching Mania, where you have freaking Jonathan Taylor Thomas as a big part of WrestleMania. I just saw Lawrence Taylor beat Bam Bam Bigelow. I watched Mr. T be part of a winning team at the first one and win a match at the second one.
Right, and I mean, you know, having Rousey like fight for a title at WrestleMania in her first match is probably a bad idea.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to expose anything like that, and you want to put on a good match at Mania, so that's fine to put her. That, like you said, they have been building towards that. It makes the handshake at the Rumble a little strange, but you know, it is what it is.
And then we have, so we're doing this a little bit early, so they probably will add a 205 Live match on the kickoff show or something like that. But right now that hasn't been announced. The other two matches that have been announced, we have Asuka versus Noia Jacks. I like the build to this, but to me it's a foregone conclusion. I don't see how Nia Jax derails Asuka.
I'm not concerned, but there's a part of me that is a little bit. Like, I don't know. Like, they made Nia seem strong. They had her cut that whole promo about beating Asuka, and I get that, everyone is going to say they want to beat Asuka, but I don't know. Like I said, with Nia Jax versus Alexa possible and Asuka versus Charlotte possible, I guess it's possible that there is some sort of screwy finish here, or Nia gets the win, or something like that, which I wouldn't want to see. But I guess they have to do something.
Yeah, the idea that Asuka's first loss is at Elimination Chamber, not in the Chamber,
Yeah.
like it's just what?
Right. Not for a title, not for anything.
Yeah.
It shouldn't happen, and it probably won't. However, I could see a double count out. I could see something. Because I don't know, like, why do you put this match now? Like, this is something that you should have saved and built towards again, and as a meaningful thing.
Well, they still have this week, I guess, to build a little bit more towards it, but...
No, yeah, of course, but, like, it's at Elimination Chamber, where it could be SummerSlam, it could be Mania.
True. Well, and then the other announced match we have is... So we both agree. So far, just to recap, we think Roman wins. We think that Asuka wins.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And this one's a little tougher to call. The first ever Women's Elimination Chamber. You're going to have... Alexa Bliss is defending her title against Bayley, Sasha, Sonya Deville, Mandy Rose, and Mickie James. I don't see... I mean, so it's interesting. It seems that either Alexa is actually turning face a little bit, or just playing Mickie James, because this week she was kind of like being really nice to Mickie, and she had gone to kind of help her out, and was like, we need to be together. And then Mickie basically called her out and was like, I think you're only doing this because you're scared of Riot Squad, which is so weird because it's only two of them, right? Like, if Paige was in this match, then I think, the concern of half of the match is one team is a big deal, right?
Mm.
I think this fear of, oh no, there's two of them, and, look, let's be serious here. I don't think the two people that you need to be worried about in this match are Sonya and Mandy.
Well, I mean, Sonya's pretty tough, but yeah, I mean, they'll always try to sell the numbers game and that sort of thing. So if they're two of the first three women out of the chamber, then that does make a difference if it's 2-on-1 for the entire match. But, I'm not sure we'll exactly get that. But, yeah, I don't know where they're going with Alexa. I don't know where they're going with Bayley and Sasha. So it's interesting because I think any of those three could get the win. Alexa should be the champion going into WrestleMania. She's had the belt this whole time. She should be the champion for the biggest show. And Bayley and Sasha can do their own thing, and that'll be fine. But I could see them transitioning the belt that way. But, it's going to be interesting to see where they go, because those two, Alexa and Nia, all need a Mania match. And so does Asuka, technically. So, there's a lot of women on Raw who need a spot for Mania. Do they all get thrown into one? Do they break it up and there's three separate matches coming out of them? So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you would think that if you end up doing... So, Asuka and Charlotte, let's say, I think Alexa wins this match.
Mm-hmm.
So then Alexa and somebody else, maybe Nia. And then... I mean, you could... but then you could have, like, another, like, 6-woman match. Couldn't you? I mean, because then we're not including Becky Lynch.
You could have Absolution. Well, yeah. Well, that would be the SmackDown side. You could have Becky, Naomi, and someone against the Riot Squad or something like that.
I think they should just start it at 12 maybe this year and just do some matches.
Everyone on the show, everyone on the roster has a match.
Like, do a 2.5-hour intermission. Like, let people get out of the building.
Oh my god!
Like, I can go shopping, like clean something, come back. You know, hang out with Charlie.
Strange that the two things you chose to do.
I don't want to talk about
clean.
it. I'm not sure why those were the first two. Okay, let's just so essentially we both think that Alexa's going to squeak by. We think Bayley and Sasha kind of eliminate themselves. They can't both eliminate themselves, but like there's going to be issues
they take
there.
care of each other some way.
Yeah, they like cancel each other out. I don't see any way that Mandy, Sonya, or Mickey win the title. That's those. There's no way. So let's say that Alexa holds on to it. I think it'll be cool. I want to see how they use the chamber. You know, if like are they going to do anything crazy? You know, are you going to see? I mean, we've seen some insane things in a chamber. They're going to have to do something to stand out. I think because you know the whole point of a chamber is for that it's kind of ultra violent.
Yeah, I mean, it should be interesting. It should be good. It's going to be cool to see the women in the chamber, and it should be a lot of fun. You know, this is something that could add to Alexa's character, and you know, she's already great, so it just solidifies her.
All right, and then I mean, so that's the chamber. That's what we have announced so far. Do you think any ideas of what else we might see on this card? There's no tag match.
Yeah, I mean, probably something with the club and the revival.
A bar, maybe. Maybe we can get a triple threat tag team match.
Yeah, who knows?
And we won't go into depth about it, but this weekend is a pretty big weekend for Evolve. They're hosting their 100th show in Laboom. Of course, as per usual, when big things happen, I, of course, decide to go away on vacation, so I sadly won't be around for the card. But it's kind of great to see, you know, a good company continue. I think they've made some changes lately that are positive, and I don't know, even the layout of the show, the way they've been doing. Is there anything that you're looking forward to in particular?
No. I'm intrigued by it being the 100th show and something important happening from it, but when I look at the cards, I don't see where that comes from. You know, this week I got an email saying, like, this will change the course of Evolve, and it makes me want to go. It really does. Spend the $20, walk the 3 blocks. It's not the worst thing in the world. So it very well could happen, but I don't know, man. I don't know.
Fair. I mean, you know, they're building some stars. You got Austin Theory's in the main event, just pretty big deal. By the way, speaking of Evolve emails, I thought something that was funny was they sent one on like Valentine's Day. It's like, you know, Happy Valentine's Day. If you don't have a Valentine, don't worry. The WWE family is there for you. I just was like,
they know their audience. That's for sure.
If you, yeah. But I was thinking, like, if you're feeling lonely and like you read that, you know, the WWE family is there for you, I'm not sure if that makes you feel better. I think that makes you feel like, oh man, my Valentine is Evolved. That's a little weird.
I'm sure there are people who felt that was a great thing. So we're happy for you all, and congratulations.
I wonder if there's anybody who opened that and went, you know what? I feel a lot better about
Thank
today.
you, Evolve. I needed this today.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great.
For sure, there is somebody who tweeted out a picture like, you know, forget about old you, I got Evolve. Like something like that.
God, if you know anybody who did that, please tweet at us. Running Wild Podcast.
Don't just lose our Twitter feed and go find something else to do.
And I guess the last bit of news that we'll talk about before we so it's 205 Live. First, have you seen the pictures of Drake shaking Andrew's hand backstage, Andrew Gulak backstage. It's very much like the Triple H shots of shaking hands with the guys. But somebody tweeted like pocket Triple H because he's so much, he is so much smaller than Gulak that I'm just trying to remember because like I've stood pretty close to Gulak, and I never got the feeling that
he's just tiny.
Yeah, I didn't get the feeling that Gulak is that much bigger than me. So then I was like, wait a minute, am I bigger than Drake? Like I'm
probably.
It was just
close enough.
Really funny to see, but
yeah, that was speaking of Gulak, that was a great performance by him on 205 Live, and like if there was any clearer of a statement like, hey, this is Triple H's 205 Live and not Vince McMahon's anymore. I think the snapping of Drew Gulak from the PowerPoint presentation to a psychotic killer was all we needed to see.
Well, I won't lie to you. I mean, I love the PowerPoint stuff.
Yes, Drew Gulak was amazing with that, and it was entertaining. However, I would like to see him as a more serious person, and I thought that he did a great job doing that on 205 Live. Now, my entire problem here is why in the world did Hideo Itami face Roderick Strong in the first round? If there are guys who are advancing who are kind of just like, okay, whatever. Why waste that match like that? Why wouldn't that just be like the final?
It does seem like the brackets are weird. I mean, and they just brought in. Wait, am I getting this right? Murphy?
Yes.
So that was interesting because I thought it was going to be Leo Rush. That he'd be going up. He seems perfect for 205 Live. But I'm actually pretty excited to see Murphy there. I think that's a good move. But Roderick Strong and, sometimes you need to look at the whole tournament, I guess. Take a step back when it's over. It's hard when you're in the middle of it because this does not make any sense right now.
Right. And, I get, like, you don't want to just throw Gargano and Rush and everyone into this tournament. Like, I get that. You want to use the guys you have on 205 Live already, and that's fine. But when I look at this, I'm intrigued as to who is going to be fighting at WrestleMania. In my mind, one of them should and very well probably will be Roderick Strong. I don't know who his counterpart is. Buddy Murphy could be a likely candidate. I don't really care who wins this. I'm excited to see who comes out of the tournament. It just feels like you put, possibly the match of the tournament in your first round. And, I'm sure they'll do a great job of setting everything up as they always do and building up these stars that they have. And after Mania, we'll get an influx of some new guys, and that's fine. But, it's going to be interesting to see.
I think the smart money, to me, is still with Cedric. He was the number one contender.
Cedric Roddy would be. Oof.
Yeah, I mean, Cedric.
There's no heel there, though.
Yeah, but I don't think in this tournament you need that.
You don't necessarily. But the babyface in peril and that sort of thing. Usually goes a long way.
No, yeah, it's always fun. I guess. Listen.
So next week we have Gallagher and who? Do you remember?
Man, I'm dying over here. I know that Gallagher got yelled at, and he has to have proper wrestling attire next week.
Which, again, stepping away from the Vince McMahon 205 Live.
I know that there's they had. I'm trying to think who he's supposed to be. I think he's going up against Mustafa Ali.
There you go. Yes.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I enjoy Mustafa Ali, and I wouldn't mind seeing him go a little bit here. But, if Gallagher is going to, again, get back to more of the Cruiserweight Classic Gallagher and the original days of of the character, then that's something that I'm looking forward to as well.
This is where I do like Vince, like, he's British. Put him in a waistcoat. Make him wrestle in that all the time.
It's crazy, man. It's so funny to see, just how drastically things are changing so quickly.
What are British people like? Umbrellas? It's always raining there. Crumpets, tea, waistcoats. He's just going over stereotypes. It's so good.
Yeah, it's good to see it doesn't apply to just one set of people. It just goes for anyone.
Yeah, like when he did Gulag, he's like, let's make him a geek. What do geeks love? Computers. That means they're good at PowerPoint. like what? I just want to hang out with Vince and just get his line of thinking, because it's just the ideas that must have been shouted out. It's just unbelievable when you see Triple H change the ideas. Then it makes you think, like, what was Vince like? What was his line of thinking? It's so much fun.
Where exactly were we going with this? And I'm thankful, very very much so, that Triple H is more in charge and taking over at 205 Live again, because it's what we wanted to see from the show, and it can mean something as a division if done properly. So, just let's look at a match that was announced for Long Beach. Two of the most popular cruiserweights of the past 30 years, Liger and Mysterio. I think they show you how much a cruiserweight division can be important and can mean something. And you look at the guys like Skrull and Takahashi and Ospreay and Ricochet and all those guys in New Japan. That division, maybe it doesn't mean as much, but those guys mean something. And when those guys have matches, it's like, oh, here we go, junior heavies. This is going to be fun. You didn't get that with the, larger than life characters of 205 Live, because that's not what these guys do. So this is a welcome transition.
Yeah, and interesting question before I guess we'll head into the interview and wrap up the show today. Rich Swann was officially released by WWE today. Now that Evolve, we know that there's a very open relationship there. You would think that one place that Swann might be able to go. Now, mind you, the domestic charges that were brought, that one of the reasons why he was basically suspended, those were dropped. So he has not been convicted of anything, but they parted ways. Anywho, he
mutually agreed to part ways.
Like, he can't show up on Evolve now, can he? Like,
sure he can. I don't. Everything was dropped, and they mutually agreed to part ways. So I'm definitely looking at it as some form of, like, hey, we're not going to use you. Okay, cool. So let me go do something. And they did that. They announced it in that way, that they mutually agreed to part ways. So maybe this is a case of go rehab your image a bit. Go wrestle in Evolve. Go wrestle in PWG. Go do all these things. And then down the line, we'll see you again, possibly.
Yeah, all right. I could see that happening. There's a part of me that thinks that they might have severed ties with him because his name was there at all, and now Evolve would also kind of stay away from him because of the ties they have.
Yeah, but if that was the case, I feel like they would have just said, we terminated his contract and we released him. But they didn't. They said we mutually agreed to part ways. So that leaves a better taste in your mouth than him just straight getting released.
Wait, did they wish him well in his future endeavors? Because that's important.
Probably. I
Okay.
didn't see the
because
the whole thing.
Enzo, he wasn't wished well in his future endeavors. So
and rightfully so. Fuck that guy. But anyway.
By the way, there's a show called Smackdown that we didn't really watch, or didn't really talk about, but essentially they're changing the...
I was going to mention that, for that exact reason, so go ahead.
So essentially, Ziggler and Corbin have won their way into now what is it going to be, a 5-way?
Yes.
At Fastlane.
Where Baron Corbin takes the pin.
Yeah, no, that's 100%, right? He takes the pin. I don't know what we're going to do with Sami and Kevin here, but
Yeah, I mean that's been the question all along. This past week, like Sami Zayn was like a little rude to his best friend Kevin Owens. So I don't really know where we're going, what the hell's going on. If Sami stays heel, then I guess that's like acceptable. Kevin Owens being babyface would be strange. But I mean, he gets the reactions and stuff anyway. But from everyone, that would be a little weird.
Only you could say that the same man who powerbombed his best friend after he won his first title in WWE on the goddamn ring apron, right? Only you would say that the guy who was powerbombed and destroyed on one of his biggest nights ever was rude to Kevin Owens. Like, is that rude in comparison? Like, I think it's rude
I'm sorry, do two wrongs make a right?
Oh, I disagree greatly. But anyway, I thought that Sami was just standing his ground. And, everything was fine there.
I mean, they put their past behind them for the moment. And they're starting anew. They're friends. This is all going swimmingly, and I just think what Sami Zayn did on SmackDown was a little uncalled for. Kevin Owens was looking out for his friend, trying to help him out, and we'll see where it goes.
All right, but that was really all that came out of SmackDown.
So now here's my question coming out of all this. Like, they're not crazy enough to go back to Shinsuke and Dolph, right? Like they're not.
I mean,
they're not suicidal, are they?
Dolph did get signed to a major contract.
Right, exactly. And he's back. He's in this Mania match. His goal is to main event the show. It's a good enough storyline where I'm concerned. If it wasn't Dolph Ziggler, maybe I would be a little more concerned. But I don't know, man. There's a history between Shinsuke and Dolph. If WWE were to pull the rug out from underneath everyone of AJ Shinsuke and go Dolph Shinsuke, oh man.
There's no way you can do that. There's no way you can't sell the build. AJ. Yeah, you can't sell the build between AJ and Knock and then pivot. The only reason I can think that is Vince is like, I'm not going to have a New Japan guy versus a TNA guy as my main event.
This match happened in Japan before? No, I'm not doing this.
We need to use one of our guys. A guy with a lot of spirit. A guy who's been around here for a while. A guy who's got a good handshake.
What's that guy? What's his name? Where he named him after the movie? Rocky. What's that guy?
Oh no, I don't know what's gonna happen, which makes it a little bit more exciting. But at the same time, I almost wish Fastlane wasn't happening. Just let it be. Let there be 5 weeks between a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think you need it.
It makes SmackDown more relevant if there's no Fastlane. Then this 5-way happens on SmackDown, or over the next 4 weeks, AJ defends against everyone. You know what I mean? You could do a lot of cool things for SmackDown without having the show on the network. And I get it; it is what it is. But it would help SmackDown. And it's funny, I've been watching some old school Raws and stuff like that, and every other week there's a title match, or there's a cage match, or there's a this or that, and it's stuff that nowadays people will be like, oh my god, they're just giving this stuff away, and what are they doing? But that's exactly how it's always been. So they need those kind of things on a Raw and a SmackDown, and to keep them important.
100% agree. All right, so we're gonna now give you guys a chance to take a listen to the interview with Rob Viper from High Spots, where we just kind of chat about wrestling fandom a little bit and our love of CMLL, which I'm sure that you were very upset that you missed that opportunity to sit down. Yeah. All right, we'll be back with you momentarily. Enjoy the interview. All right, I'm here with Rob Viper. Rob, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very glad that somebody followed up on my innocent Twitter question.
Yeah, so one of the things that really got us to start talking was I saw your tweet, and it had said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, that you haven't heard of a podcast that had fans on talking about how their fandom has changed, and that really piqued my interest because over the course of covering stuff myself and doing the work over at PW Ponderings and my own personal podcast, I just realized that my fandom has changed, immeasurably since the beginning, and I was really interested. So what really sparked you to even tweet that out?
I don't know. I think because these days Twitter, you can disagree with me, it's kind of a cesspool among wrestling fans.
Yeah.
There's so much nonsense that goes on, and sometimes you're just looking for a little positivity. And once in a while, some people will send out tweets like, "Here are 5 things." Like, for example, "Here are 5 things I'm happy about in wrestling." And I like seeing tweets like that. They make me happy, and I can be a negative person too. So sometimes you just want to be positive, and I just wanted to see, like, why wasn't there somebody out there who's talking to all these people on Twitter, including myself, who are constantly negative, and just try to get them to focus more on what makes them happy about wrestling. How did they grow up in wrestling? How did they become such? Because if you're going to be involved in the cesspool of wrestling, you've got to be a hardcore fan in the first place. So I just want to see, like, how did people come to be where they are? What made them a fan? Because at our core, we're all really hardcore, happy wrestling fans.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I think a lot of people on Twitter kind of lose sight of this, and I think in writing about it and discussing it, it comes off as very negative. I think that to the core, as you were saying, most of us are fans, and that's why we critique it, because we want it to be the best it is. Because if somebody outside of our cesspool makes a comment about wrestling, as that happened with the UFC, I think, was it John Jones recently? Everybody swarms them because it's like, no, like, that's our thing. Like, we can make fun of it and we can destroy it and rip it apart. But once you say something, that's off limits.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's one of the things that I always take issue with is how people say, like, well, if you say something bad about it, you can't be. If you're negative about something, that means you're not a fan. Whereas I take the opposite approach. That, like, I love something so much, that's why I'm negative, because I want it to be the best it can be. And the best example for me is, like, when I go to Mexico, sometimes these people who are fans of CMLL or who work in CMLL will ask me, like, "Dude, why are you so negative? Why are you so mean? You must hate CMLL. You must be a big AAA fan." And I'm like, "No, I love CMLL. I want to see CMLL be the best it can be. That's why I point out the negative things so much, so that they can get fixed." People just don't understand that. Like, that's just my point of view, but they do get it after I explain it to them.
How did you become, living in Canada, how did you become a fan of Lucha Libre, Mexican wrestling?
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up just like I think everybody. Where you grew up a WWE fan, I assume too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, we all do, because it's just like the main thing, or WCW back when it existed, of course. But these days it's WWE, and so I was a big wrestling fan, big WWE fan. I didn't know anything else really existed, honestly, except for when I would see the PWI magazines, whatever was in there. WCW wasn't even on my radar because we didn't really get it up here in Canada. And my dad was actually a big soccer fan. So he would watch just random soccer games we got one Spanish channel up here in Canada. And so he would watch soccer and I would walk away because I have no interest in soccer. I was a wrestling hockey guy. And one day I came back to the TV after he had finished watching his soccer game, and lo and behold, what's on TV? It's wrestling, but it's not WWE wrestling. It's Mexican wrestling. At the time, I didn't know what it was, but eventually I would find out it was Arena Mexico, CMLL stuff. And I remember it was like Canek and Rayo de Jalisco Jr., Apollo Dantes, all these guys who we consider older guys who aren't really high flyers or anything. But to me, seeing a guy jump off the top rope, I wasn't seeing that in WWF at the time. And the moves they were doing, I definitely wasn't seeing in WWF at the time. And it struck a chord with me, the colorful outfits, the flying they were doing. It was just so different. And every week I would tune in to try to see, like, what was this? And eventually they showed AAA instead of CMLL, and that was a whole different thing than CMLL, because there's so many differences between the companies. But at the time, I was just like your generic fan who had no idea what he was watching. I just knew that I liked it.
And, you speak about the differences between the two. Do you have like a current preference between CMLL or AAA?
As of this moment, I mean, definitely, I would say that my CMLL is higher than AAA, because I kind of think AAA is at the worst moment in my entire 20 years or whatever of following them, or more than 20 years now. But if you would ask me, since I started getting into Lucha until now, year by year, what my favorite company is, it would probably be like AAA. But lately, it's been CMLL. I mean, and definitely right now, yeah, I much prefer CMLL. I think AAA is probably the lowest it's ever been, because of the talent roster they have in general, and of course the people who run it, I'm not really big fans of. So I would gear more towards CMLL. Plus CMLL is more available. I mean, how many times do you watch CMLL per week?
I'd say at this point, I kind of got crazy. To be honest with you, what happened was, so I never watched CMLL before 2 years ago. None of the guys were on my radar. I mean, even when like Lucha Underground came out, I knew that wasn't a style that I had watched, so I didn't really dive into it. And what ended up happening was my son is 3 now, and I kept trying to get goad him into a little bit of wrestling stuff, and he'll do a 2-sweet. We do it like daily before he goes to bed. Tell him like how I say, "Tenga sueños dulces porque tú eres." And then we go, too sweet, and he goes to sleep. He loves Kalisto. Like, we do the lucha thing. We do a little bit of wrestling. I've got like all these books. And then what I realized, because unless I'm really upset with him, I only speak to him in Spanish. So I realized I wouldn't be able to speak to him in Spanish about wrestling, because growing up with my grandparents, we never spoke about wrestling in Spanish, and I never watched it in Spanish. So I started watching. I don't know how I came across, oddly, just that CMLL was on YouTube, and I just started watching it on a lark, and then I just kept watching it because it's so different than what I'm used to with WWE. I kind of like that they completely embrace like the Rudos and the Technicos. It's so very clear, who you can or are supposed to be rooting for. It's so over the top. I mean, I saw Kemonito, and then who else? Oh, Mihei and Microman, and I was like floored. I was like, this stuff is Cranio, I think, was on the first show that I watched. I was like, what is happening? And the announcing is great.
Sorry, go ahead.
The announcing is amazing. It's just the entire package is so over the top, like Spanish television that I watched. It's kind of a lot like the telenovelas that my grandmother used to watch when I was growing up.
Yeah, you describe it exactly right, and I love that you point out the Technico and Rudos thing, because that's one of the things I stress, that like that's why I love it. I don't like a lot of times going to crowds. I mean, I'll use ROH as an example, but it's definitely not exclusive to ROH. But the crowd is there to watch they want to see a good match. If they don't like the match, they'll get their chants in. They'll clap for cool moves and stuff. Whereas in Mexico, it's like a soccer game. That's how I compare it to, where you have a side, you pick your side, and it doesn't matter what that side does, you're going to support it. And it's such a fun, especially a live atmosphere. I mean, I can't recommend the live atmosphere enough, but even if you can't get a chance to go down and experience the live atmosphere, just watching, it's so much more fun when the crowd is into it, and you're not worried about, well, it's not perfect from a technical standpoint when you're watching guys in there, but you're not worried about that, because I mean, to this day, I mean, I want to see a good match, obviously, but I have my favorites who I'll cheer for. I mean, I'm the world's biggest Volador Jr. fan. And I know people think he's not exactly the world's best wrestler or anything, but I don't care. I want to see him win. I don't care how he wins. I like to shut my brain off, and that's the great thing I find about Lucha, is more so than American wrestling or Japanese wrestling. With Lucha, you can just turn your brain off, watch your favorites, and just have a good time, which is what this should be all about.
Yeah, I think I don't know if how much you I don't know if you've covered like companies or if you write a lot about them. I know you're tweeting a lot. I know that for me, when I'm watching Ring of Honor, it's almost gotten to a point, and this is my own fault, right? But I have a shoot job and everything. I don't make my money off of writing about wrestling, but I cover Ring of Honor, and sometimes there are actually times where I go, okay, I don't want to watch WWE tonight. I don't want to have to start writing about Ring of Honor right now. So then I put CMLL on as oddly an escape from all the other wrestling, because I can turn my brain off, you know, and I can laugh along with the commentary. I mean, I also love that for me it's amazing how they very rarely they have names for a couple of the moves, but a lot of times it's like, oh, he's got him in this hold now. He's really punishing him with this hold, or he's got this lock on, and I'm like, this is great. Like, it's the excitement from commentary is not about calling the moves per se, but it's about, just like with soccer, it's the elevation of the excitement in their voices. The cadence I think is great. I mean, they just kind of keep rolling through it. I even like how they'll kind of announce that it's the next guy commentating. You know, like, you know, this is fantastic. What a great match. Well, what do you think, Rob? And then like they just pick up, so like you know who's speaking next if you haven't been watching it forever. You know, so much of it is, I just think, enjoyable. And even when you're watching, I'd say the Puebla crowd, sometimes the arena doesn't look full, but it sounds full. You know, and everyone there seems like they're just as excited as if it was like a packed pay-per-view house.
Yeah, that's the great thing about it. I mean, the people who attend wrestling shows in Mexico, they're going. It's mostly, it's very family orientated. So they're going for a night out with their family, and their main goal is to have a good time. That's it. Like, they just want to go and enjoy themselves. Whereas I think that sometimes American fans would be, they're going to be critical of something. They're like going to see a performance, you know? Like if you'd go to see a movie and then afterwards you would talk about the movie. What were the good things? What did the star do that you liked, that you didn't? You know, how the acting was. Whereas here it's like, they're not tearing it apart like, oh, that guy blew a move in the first match, or that guy's not selling the arm enough. They're just like, I had a good time. My favorites won, or my favorites got cheated, and I got to yell curse words at the bad guy for beating him. That's really what the goal is, and I think that's part of the. It's a hard entry point for. Let me see if I can explain this properly. If you're a wrestling fan and you're not into lucha, like Rich, you're the anti what I'm about to explain, because you said you just picked it up, you got into it, and you started watching 2 years ago and you liked it. Whereas I think a lot of people who come in as wrestling fans, it's hard for them to turn their brain off to like they can't understand, why are these guys not selling the way I'm used to, or how come they're not doing like 2.999 near falls leading up to the finish of the matches. They don't get the comedy that's involved in the matches. Whereas Lucha Libre is so popular amongst people who aren't wrestling fans. If you take a non-wrestling fan and sit them at a PWG show maybe, they might not be able to get into it. Whereas you take them to Mexico and you sit them in the crowd at a Lucha Libre show, and they will get into it. I mean, I have so much proof. When you go through Instagram on the shows and you see the tourists who are attending CMLL shows, they can't get enough of it. Everything is just so entertaining to them. And a million times I've seen comments that like, I'm not a wrestling fan, but I was at this show in Mexico today. I'm paraphrasing, of course, and it was amazing. Like, they can get into it.
Yeah, I'm excited to actually like run that experiment with my wife, because she's been to an ROH show, she's been to an Evolve show, and she's been to WWE shows. So I'm looking forward to it because by proxy and by living with me, I normally watch a lot of the CMLL, but when she's not around or when she's watching something else. But there are a lot of times where it's on when she's in the room, and she'll laugh at stuff. She'll be like, "What is this guy?" And she gets into it. So I think that when we get there live, and with other guys, I think I have to like hype her up before shows. So I think before I went to an Evolve show, I had like Keith Lee's theme song, and I put it on, and she liked the theme song so much that she then was excited to see him. But it was like it was that connection she made. I think that the guys who are major characters really stick out for her. So I think this is going to be absurd because everybody's a character. Like they're all. I mean, I can't wait Sunday night. Pulvero's going to be there, and I just can't wait until he shoots off that gun, and I can picture her jumping and getting a little, frightened when it happens. I think it's going to be fantastic.
That thing is loud. Be careful.
Did you grow up speaking Spanish? Was that a problem for you, like language barrier wise?
No, I credit Lucha Libre 100% to learning Spanish. I did not grow up nobody spoke Spanish in my household. None of my friends did. The only time I encountered it would be Lucha Libre. And then about 2 years after I found it first on TV is when I made friends with this guy online who was doing regular trips down to Mexico. And he would bring back stuff for me, especially magazines, because I love magazines. And I couldn't understand a single word, but I would just read through those over and over until the words, I started to figure out what they meant. And I took 1 year of Spanish school, but it didn't really work out. And then the rest of the time, it's just I picked up Spanish just from constant watching of Lucha Libre videotapes, DVDs, like I said, the magazines. And I don't think I'm perfect at it, or I'm far from perfect, but I get by enough to where I can carry on, whether it be personal or business conversations. And I have no problem when I'm down in Mexico. So that's why I get confused when like people online, you run into them once in a while and they say like, well, how can you watch Japanese wrestling, New Japan, if you don't understand what they're saying? And it's like the emotion and the voice, just like you were talking about earlier with the announcers. When I was picking up Mexican wrestling, the announcers are what did it for me. They're screaming when these guys do the dives or when there's a finish and the Rudo cheats. And I wish I could understand what they're saying, but I don't. But I get the general idea from their tone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm actually a little bit of the camp where maybe this is where I'm a little different here. I sometimes don't get into New Japan as much because I don't understand what they're saying, and I so love the story that commentary can tell and how it can make a average match that much better. Where I grew up speaking Spanish. I will say that I'm not 100% perfect either, by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely I've learned a lot more. I've even learned like idioms. JCR the other day said sopa de su propio chocolate, and I had no idea what that was, and I found out that it means like a taste of your own medicine.
Yeah.
I call my grandmother a lot when these things happen, and I'll ask her, and it gets me that much more involved. But I kudos to you, man, because that's I can't even really picture jumping into it without understanding it, because that's really I actually got into it because I wanted to know more about wrestling Spanish, Spanish wrestling language than I had before, and it was kind of cool to learn more that way. But that's
you have to be careful because with these announcers, there are some phrases that they'll just yell out randomly that have nothing to do with anything. Yeah. And then if you repeat them, you look like an idiot because you don't know what it means. Like one of the AAA announcers back in the day, the 90s, the 2000s, used to have a saying, "Oso como sabroso," which to this day I still don't know what it means, but it's something about a bear. Or he'll yell out like "guaca de pollo," which literally means chicken soup.
Yeah.
But it means something. Like it means something when he says it. It kind of ties into whatever's going on. But to like someone like me who's trying to pick up the language as I'm watching, and then I find out that like he's yelling chicken soup, it just confuses me even more.
Yeah, I mean the oso sabroso. It's like delicious bear. I realized what's it called? My grandfather would say a lot of things in Spanish that a lot of it's just rhyming. Like he'll say something that just two words that rhyme. Kind of like just out of nowhere, and it could be excitement, could be happiness, whatever. Just yelling it out just because they rhyme and it makes no sense. I mean, even one of the, I curse on this show. My grandfather used to say, "Me cago en la mierda," which literally translates to "I shit on the shit." Which I'd go to my grandmother like, I don't understand why anyone would shit on the shit, and she was like, "No, it's just like a phrase. I mean, like it's not. It's like whatever." So, definitely, like the idiomatic stuff is definitely a little bit of a barrier. But I think they The other thing I think that is great is when they just give up and just say a move in English. Like the other day I'm watching, he's like, backcracker. I'm like, what? Did he just say backcracker with a Spanish accent? Like that's unbelievable.
It's amazing with the amount of time that move gets used. They haven't come up with some sort of Spanish name for it yet. One of the first words I learned in Spanish was when you shave somebody's head in a match, right? You win a hair versus hair match. It's rapa or rapar, and then you conjugate it however you want to do it. But I learned it because one of the first magazines I got was covering a hair match, and the headline was like, Pirata Morgan, Rapa, so-and-so, whoever it was that he took his hair. And, I'm just learning the language, and I'm like, wait a minute, he raped him? Because I didn't understand what the word meant. And then I had to learn it eventually, and I'm like, oh, because, you know words in English, and when sometimes they're the same in Spanish, but not always. But that's one of the first words I learned in Spanish. And, of course, I learned to count because then I was like, oh, una caída, one fall, segunda caída, second fall, tercera. You have to learn stuff like that, and then it just went from there.
Did one of the things that really confused me when I first started watching, and I was a little bit too embarrassed to watch, the way the falls work was very confusing to me because I didn't get that the captain's fall counts as much as the falls against the other guys on the team. So, like, the first couple of weeks I'm watching this, I'm like, how many falls are these matches? And I didn't understand why, like, a fall wouldn't end when one guy was pinned or what was going on at all. But I just wanted to ask you, do you think that the best job in the world is CMLL's official barber?
Well, before I answer that question, I will tell you that about the captain's thing that you mentioned is like, I actually had a cheat sheet, so to speak. When I started watching, CMLL was actually doing a thing where the captain would wear either a pink or a green wristband. So you would know who the captain was, and they would explain it before the match. I don't know why it didn't stick. I mean, CMLL, you can't really explain anything they do sometimes. But I think that was super helpful for me when I started out. I wish they would do something like that these days to help newer fans, especially now that they're on the YouTube and anybody can really watch it. But the barber, I forget his name. It's Pancho something or other.
He's the man.
He's the man, and he's always wearing that same suit with the pink lining on the inside.
That's the best.
Oh yeah, he's got a job for life. I mean, I remember seeing him. When I saw him, I was like, holy shit, this guy must be 90 years old, and he's still around now, like 25 years later. The guy just
can't believe
everybody.
He's so fantastic. Maybe you can give a little insight to some of the listeners who don't follow it as much. The referees, I was always like astounded by this when I started watching it. So are the Toronto's referees the only ones that are really heel and face, essentially? Or is this commonplace in Mexican wrestling?
Yeah, the heel dynamic with the Técnico and Rudo referee, it's very common in Mexico. I mean, it dates back to, I think, the mid-'80s. Basically, every arena, every local promotion, whatever you want to call it, they all have their own heel and I'm just going to say Técnico and Rudo.
Yeah.
But for those who don't know, Técnico, good guy, Rudo, bad guy. Every arena has their referees. There's usually one referee who's specifically the Rudo referee. And it's really good at a live show. It's so much fun when the Rudo ref is like cheating and then he gets his comeuppance. It used to be like Arena Mexico, CML was the only place that didn't have that. After they had a referee named Grant Davis in the late 80s and early 90s who played an openly Rudo referee, but after he passed away, they dropped it completely, and we never saw it again until Tirantes ended up showing up in like 2009, I think it was, or 2010, and that was the one promotion where you could get away with it. But AAA was notorious for having it, and I can understand how that's a rough thing for new fans to get into. But I assure you, if I was running a company, I would 100% do it on the non-TV shows. On the TV shows, I would kind of limit its usage, but it's a good tool for a live show because, especially in front of a family crowd, I mean, the kids, they hate it. They get so mad at these referees when they're cheating, and they love it when finally that's why every match used to have two referees. You would have the good one and the bad one because somebody needed to keep the bad referee in check.
Oh my god! Because there are times when Tarantes is counting the pin, and I am dying. I'm like, oh, why? It's so slow, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Yep.
I'm like yelling at him. So I really am kind of really getting into that, and it's definitely a dynamic that in terms of WWE. I mean, Danny Davis. All right, I mean, Nick Patrick for WCW. Those are the only times I can think of it, and I think it's. I love when Tarantes fakes lifting the Technico's hand at the end of the match and just pulls away and makes them look foolish. It definitely adds another layer to it that's amazing.
It can be overdone. Like I definitely think they're overdoing it these days. But if you could somehow, like if you watch Tarantes' early run in CMLL when he first joined the company, I think that's when they had it perfect because every referee they had was an old guy who played it straight and called it down the middle. And then all of a sudden you had this one guy who showed up out of nowhere, Tarantes, he was part of the Invasores group who were invading CMLL, ex-AAA guys, and he would cheat to help them win. And it got over huge because, like I said, that thing was absent from Arena Mexico. And I think you can use that properly. I just don't like when sometimes he's not even playing Rudo. He's just being a regular referee, but he comes off as a Rudo.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's almost like his facial expressions, and I think it's his count too, because sometimes it feels like he's just teasing the fans, by counting so much slower, that I think it drives people crazy, and he's not even, I think he's just being down the middle, but it's just like, what are you doing?
Yep, and he's very interactive. I mean, when you go live, you should see if you can somehow get his attention. He will go back and forth with you. Like on one of the last shows I was at Arena Mexico, we were giving him the finger because we hated the job he was doing, and he looked at us and said something about our mothers, and then he would purposely after the match he would count to 3 and he would look back in our direction because he knew that the team we wanted to win lost, and he would give us a little wink or point at us or something. I mean, that's part of the little things that he does that I like. That's great. So. Now I've seen a couple comments where you lament for the fans of the WWE. Did you stop? When did you stop completely watching it? That's actually an interesting question because, see, my favorite wrestler of all time, without a doubt, is Rey Mysterio Jr. I think him and Negro Casas are 1 and 2, the best wrestlers ever. But on my personal favorite list, Rey is number 1. And he joined WWE in 2002, and less than a year later, I was out of it, which is the strangest thing, because you would think your favorite wrestler joins the company that you grew up watching, you'd be more into it than ever, but I just fell out of the product. It just wasn't appealing to me. I was getting more into U.S. Indies at the time, too, in addition to Lucha Libre, and there's only so much time you can have in a day, so much stuff that you can watch, and at that time they were doing man, what was the TV situation in WWE back then? I can't even remember. They had 4 hours per week?
Yeah, they had Raw and they had SmackDown. I think SmackDown was on Fridays. Yeah, on
something like that.
And it was a tape delay. Not tape delay, but it was tape show all the time. And that's where Ray was most of the time. He was on SmackDown, so it was kind of weird. I mean, he had some good stuff with Eddie. Were you able to catch any of the Eddie stuff at all with Ray in WWE?
Nope. Once I stopped watching, it's what I tell everybody who still watches WWE, because these days, I mean, the TV audience is dwindling, and I always say, once the WWE is like a habit. Once you cut the habit completely, kind of so a smoker just cuts the habit, if you can get over the hump and just not go back to it, you forget it's even there. There are some Mondays where I even forget that, oh shit, WWE, oh excuse me, WWE's on TV. It just completely slips my mind and that's just how I was back in the day. So I guess that Ray and Eddie feud would have been 2005, and it just never went through my mind to even though I had been reading and hearing good things about it, it just never crossed my mind. I cut WWE out of my life. I never went to it, but I got back into it in 2011, I think it was, because that year I was invited to attend WrestleMania, the one in Atlanta, and I didn't want to be that guy where it happens to me in my personal life sometimes where people know I'm a wrestling fan, but it's hard to explain to them they're like, well, I'm a wrestling fan, but I'm not a WWE fan. They couldn't put the two things together because everybody associates wrestling with WWE. So I felt like a jerk because I would be at like a party or something and people would start talking about WWE, and naturally somebody would say, oh, Rob's a big wrestling fan, go talk to him about it. And they would come up to me and I just couldn't talk to them and I would feel like I'm being a jerk by them thinking like, oh, he thinks he's better than me because he's a wrestling fan, but he doesn't watch WWE, or he's just messing with me. So when I got invited to WrestleMania, I didn't want to be the guy who shows up there and is like, I don't know any of these people. I have nothing to relate to you guys. Well, so I decided to start following the product a bit more. And that's when I caught up on the past. And I had like somebody put together, I think it was like 14 or 15 discs of just Rey Mysterio Jr. matches from all the time that I wasn't watching. And that's when I caught up. And I watched the Eddie feud, which was amazing. Like the work they did there was Rey's best work as far as like a complete overall personality. I mean, did you enjoy it?
Oh, I thought that was fantastic. I mean, the only thing that turned me off to Rey was actually tied to Eddie, but I didn't love his title run. And because I just felt like, and I'm sure other companies would do this, but it just felt so heavy-handed that they were giving him the title on the strength of, like, he's doing it for Eddie. And that bothered me a lot and actually soured me to Rey to the point where I actually didn't enjoy him anymore after that title reign. And Lucha Underground, it came on Netflix recently, and I just decided to binge on it, and that completely brought me back to my love of like WCW Rey, and like this guy is amazing and I love him, and reminded me of the Eddie feud, and I was like, wow, I love Rey Mysterio, and I forgot this because of WWE's booking and not because of anything he did,
Yeah, it's funny because if we go back to when I got into Lucha Libre, I told the story of how I got into like finding out about Mexican wrestling, but the one match that convinced me that I'm going to be a fan of Lucha Libre forever was a Rey Mysterio Jr. against Psychosis match Psychosis in WCW from September 1995. And I remember I recorded that match on VHS, and I would show it to my friends who were WWF fans, and they just couldn't get into it. They didn't want to watch it, or they thought they couldn't get into it because of the Spanish language, of course, and all that, and different style. But then he showed up in WCW, and they loved the guy. And they were like, oh, my God, this guy's amazing. And I'm like, guys, I tried to show you this guy having a great match, and you wouldn't even like give it the time of day a couple months ago. Now you like it? And then you fast forward to when I wasn't watching WWE when he won the title, but I got messages from these people who, I'm friends with from childhood, and they would be like, oh, you must be so happy. Your guy just won the world title at WrestleMania. And I'm like, no, I'm not even watching the show, so I didn't even know that he was in the title match, to tell you the truth.
My God, what's it like? I mean, you said like the breaking the habit, and it becomes easier and easier. I'm 35, and I can't remember a time other than when my grandmother canceled cable when I was a teenager that I didn't watch WWE Weekly, and it does feel like a slavish habit. Like I almost dislike myself as I'm watching it some weeks. And CMLL has been great because I'll turn Raw on, and then CMLL comes on about, I'm on the East Coast, so it'll come on I think about 10 o'clock at night.
Yep.
So it's like I'll ride out WWE until CMLL comes on, and then I'm like, yes, and then it kind of just jumps ship over there. What else do you watch now that you don't, you said you watch a little bit WWE, but that you're not really watching it. What do you watch in terms of American Indies that you were talking about?
I mean, I watch anything that's good. I've got, the High Spots Network, of course, because I'm affiliated with High Spots. So there's a ton of, I don't want to seem like a shill, but there's a ton of good stuff on there. I follow New Japan for the big shows, not regularly, just if I hear there's good stuff. I love AEW. PWG's my favorite U.S. indie. I love going to shows. I love watching shows. ROH TV Weekly is so much fun. That's one of the things that really confuses me when I go online and I see these people who legitimately will spend 3.5 hours watching Monday Night Raw, will spend another 2 hours the next day on Smackdown, Then I know they have some other show that comes on after SmackDown, which leads into the Cruiserweight show. Then they have a 1-hour weekend show that some people watch. And this is not even counting the weekends where they have pay-per-views, sometimes two pay-per-views a month, where the pay-per-views are like 4.5 to 5 hours if you count the pre-show. And I'm like, how can you guys invest so much time, especially when there's so much good other wrestling going on out there? I will record all the WWE stuff and I'll fast forward through it. I mean, I can get through a Raw in less than 5 minutes. I can get through a SmackDown in less than 5 minutes and only stop it if I want to see like a cool move or something, or a promo that people say is good. But these days there's so much good wrestling. I don't understand how people can devote themselves to watching a live WWE show. It boggles my mind, and I don't want to seem like I'm looking down on these people. I mean, if that's your passion and you love it, congratulations. I mean, I'm like that with Lucha Libre. I'll watch anything, but for me, it's hard enough to keep up with what goes on in Mexico now that so many people are in all these small arenas filming stuff and uploading them to YouTube. That's the majority of my time is spent tracking down all these little arenas, finding out about these people that don't get so much exposure, guys like Bandito, guys like Flamita who popped up out of nowhere, watching DTU, the smaller companies. That's my passion, just watching stuff like that and eventually putting them online in GIF form so people can... I think that's the best way to get into stuff now. If you post a GIF and people are into it, that's their gateway into searching matches on YouTube and then eventually following the guy's career.
It's I would almost say, as I sip on my IPA here, it's almost like WWE is Budweiser. It's like that first beer you have, you like it for a while, but then after a little bit, you're like, hey, you know what? There are other things that taste better, and you kind of move on. And it's weird though because at this point, I'm not drinking Budweiser anymore, but I'm still watching WWE, and it's weird. There might there's the news that some people are saying that they might come back to New York area for next year's Mania. And I was thinking, man, I'm not even sure. Like, as much as I want to go, there's a part of me that's like, maybe I don't. I got more excited about driving to. I actually went to a small arena in Poughkeepsie, New York, to go see. I was on the 205 Live tour.
Ah, yeah.
And that was crazy because it was like 2,000 people. Less. I mean, less than 3,000 people in this small little arena, and it was such a different experience for a WWE show. And I tell you that I grew up 5 minutes from La Boom, where Evolve does their shows in New York. And I was going to a bunch of those because it was just such a great feeling, like that little crowd and everyone's really into it. And I cover Ring of Honor. And, I like their work from week to week. There's some episodes, of course, that I'm not super high on, but I'm confused also that people aren't more into that. Especially, I think as they're going a little bit more kind of down the middle with their product. I don't think they're trying to get like a niche audience from the sides anymore. I think it's actually like it's like the WWE's product, but better, and you don't have to watch 9 hours every week to know what's going on.
Oh yeah, their ROH TV is excellent. I watch it every week. I don't watch it the day it airs. I usually have it on the PVR. We get it on Sunday night up here because we get the Buffalo feed up here in Toronto.
Oh, nice.
And actually, I already have my ticket for I think it's May show when they're coming up here with the War of the Worlds with the New Japan guys.
Excellent.
So I've got my ticket for that. And actually, now I'm going to sound like a hypocrite, but aside from when I get comp tickets to go to WrestleMania, when I'm in town for WrestleMania weekend, I have not been to a WWE show, branded show, since... my friend got tickets for a TV taping I want to say it was 2014 that they did here in Toronto, and it was him and his brother, but his brother dropped out, and I felt bad because I knew he wasn't going to go alone, so I went with him, and it was the worst experience of my life because it's just the TV product live is so hard because they take these weird random breaks, for the live commercials, and it's just such a turnoff. But now I'm going to sound like the hypocrite because as we talk right now, a week from today, I will be going to my first WWE branded show because they're bringing NXT here. And I got invited to go, and I turned it down. And then the guy bought a ticket and said, no, you have to come because you're going to enjoy it because it's not like regular WWE. So I will be going to experience my first NXT show a week from today, and I have no idea what to expect.
Well, I think at this point it's like NXT is WWE's indie brand, essentially, right? I mean, even if you look at the roster right now, Adam Cole, Bobby Fish, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong, Chris Hero. That's just to name a few. I mean, it's like
you didn't even name a certain Mexican we all love.
That's right, Cien Almas. I mean,
yeah.
That match with Gargano was absurd, and I think I was so excited when he got signed, and I went back and looked at a lot of his work, and I was just watching him on the WWE products, going, these guys are missing the boat, and this slow build. I mean, it was smart. Zelina Vega, man, if they're there, you're gonna love it. I don't know how much you watch if you watch any of NXT, but I think you're really gonna enjoy it. That pairing of Almas and Vega is money.
I watch NXT. I'm not a big fan of it like most people are. I mean, I guess I would describe myself a casual viewer. I tune in to see good matches, but I have no emotional investment in anything except for Sombra, obviously. And of course, my buddy works Raul Mendoza, former Jinzo, so I follow to see what he's doing sometimes. But yeah, that Gargano and Almas match was amazing, and even though I'm not a fan of WWE, I am ecstatic that everything is working out for him now, because I know that, or we're talking about Sombra, Cien Almas, that that was his dream, to wrestle in WWE, and even though I don't like WWE, I like him, and I think that I want the best for him, obviously, where he can make good money and be happy. So I'm happy that it's all coming together, and it looks like he's on the upward swing. Hopefully he'll make it to the main roster at some point. And, even though I'm not WWE, I mean, if it's a guy's dream to be there and they can make good money, and any Mexican wrestler, of course, will make more money in WWE than they will make in Mexico, I'm happy for them. I hope that they can succeed. WWE's track record with Mexicans is terrible, as we both know. And I'm all for somebody showing up there who can change that and show them that, listen, there are a lot of good wrestlers in Mexico, and you should get behind them, because there are a lot of Hispanics in the U.S. and all over the world that will follow them. I mean, the Ray Eddie thing, when they were on top, I mean, as far as I know, that drew an amazing Hispanic fan base for WWE. To this day, Ray is still the top Hispanic star they have.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, and what they're doing on the flip side is, as I think strongly as they're booking Almas, I don't understand what's going on with Gran Metalik. I mean, I almost at this point want him to go back to, and nothing on him. I want him to understand. I want him to go back to CMLL so I can see him more. I mean, 205 Live seems to be going under some changes, but the first change they announced, they have a tournament. They announced the first round matches, him versus the current number one contender Cedric Alexander, and I was like,
yeah,
oh come on, he's already going to be out. I mean, I saw him live, and obviously the stuff he does on TV translates if you see his work, but he's on another level, and I just can't believe they haven't capitalized on that at all.
Yeah, I had to explain myself to him once, because I mean, we know each other. We met each other in Mexico before, and I made music videos of his career that he loves, and he shows to everybody. But the whole thing is, I wrote something on Twitter once about how sad it is to see him where he is, and he wrote to me oh, why you got to be like that? And I'm like, no, listen, it's not a negative thing about you. I'm very happy for you, and I'm happy you're making a good life for your family now. It's just, as a fan of yours, I know you can do more than you show in WWE, and I just wish that they would give you the chance to show yourself the Massacre Dorada that me and not the Grand Metallic that the WWE universe knows, or WWE audience. Look, I'm already using their lingo.
You're getting pulled back in.
I know. Listen, you're an ROH guy, so I have to ask you, what do you think of ROH usage? Because they have a deal with CMLL. How would you rank their partnership with CMLL?
Well, see, I think they're bringing in great guys. I'd like it to be more consistent. I think some of the best usage they've had, and honestly, this to me shows Ultimo Guerrero is unbelievable in that he shows up at the ROH shows, and I think he's the best at getting the crowd into it without just doing a crazy dive. Right? Because I feel like most of the ROH crowd is like, oh, here come the CML guys. They're going to do some crazy jumps. And for me, like Guerrero really connects with the crowd. And it would be amazing if he would be allowed to play "We Will Rock You" and the actual song when he comes out, because that's another thing that I forgot to mention earlier that I love about CMLL is I guess the lack of copyright law or whatever, and they just a lot of the wrestlers just come out to like random songs from like the 80s, 90s, or 2000s from like American pop culture.
Mexico style.
Yeah, it's so great. But he's been my favorite, especially since they actually went through the trouble of like highlighting that Taven had been down there and that he and Taven had issues before. So like that little backstory was great. I was super excited when Stuka Jr. showed up. I think one of the things that they haven't done is a little bit of consistency with the guys they bring in. Mm-hmm. The way they do with New Japan. So like Kushida is somebody that, even if you don't watch New Japan, you've seen him enough on ROH TV that you recognize him, or Naito, or even Evil, right? Whereas recently they had Rei Kometa, they had Esfinge, and they had great matches. The two guys other than Guerrero that I think they do well with, Dragon Lee has been really great, and I thought Titan was great on that tour of England, I believe. So I'm hoping they're bringing up other guys, but I also want to see them bring up kind of some of the same guys, because I like that consistency and hey, this is for me watching it, it's like, oh my god, any of the guys I'm excited about. I'd personally I'd love to see Fuego, because I just want to see him do the Coco No dance on ROH TV, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen right now. But I think that they could. I don't know if it's something with the companies, but I feel like they could do a little bit more and bringing guys up, because they really do bring a lot of the New Japan guys up. But I don't think they're seeing the market in their fan base for bringing up the CMLL guys. And I think that's a mistake, because I think that if they brought them up a little bit more consistently, and maybe did an excursion type thing with a guy from CMLL where he's up for not just a weekend of shows, but where he's up for a couple of months, I think that people could really get behind some of these guys. And then you might bring in a Hispanic audience that never really looked at Ring of Honor before, but now because they have these stars are more interested in it.
Yeah, and if they want to expand, I mean, definitely, because I know ROH has little to zero West Coast presence in the United States, and if they ever wanted to go out west, I mean, it's perfect to have I would even pick a CMLL guy and toss him into one of the ROH stables. Like if you brought up, for example, Ultimo Guerrero, and you brought somebody with him. I mean, I don't know who. Let's use Rey Bucanero as just a random example. And let's say you had Bucanero turn on Guerrero and join the Kingdom, for example. Then you have an issue, Matt Taven turned one of Ultimo Guerrero's former best friends. And I want to see the CMLL guys integrated more rather than being special attractions, just like you pointed out, like with the New Japan guys.
Yeah, I mean, look, an easy guy is Roosh, right? I mean, he's part of LIJ. That's a faction that has appeared on Ring of Honor television numerous times. I mean, he could come up there. Maybe if Terrible joins him, ends up joining LIJ, they could both come up together, and I think it would go. It would really bring a lot more eyes to the product. But I think they're starting to do it more and more. I know that, like I said, the UG Taven stuff was good. Hopefully, the next time they have guys come up, you had Flip Gordon down there. And Kenny King, but they weren't down there as long as Taven was. So I'd like to see more guys go down there as well. I think that it was really fun getting to see Taven down there. I mean, I think it was Mephisto. Felt like almost, or Euphoria.
Yeah, no,
almost killed him.
Almost killed him. Yeah,
that was really scary.
Not the only fatality. Mephisto was almost responsible for it. Did you see the Reyes del Aire?
Yeah.
Late last year, where he dropped Diablo Roja right on top of his head.
Oh, it was like the same move, right?
The same move. It's just, I don't know what his deal is. I think it's just that when he picks the guys up, he doesn't let go of them in time, because you're supposed to control your own bump off that. Like the person, as he's dropping you, lets go of you so you can take your own bump. But I feel like Mephisto is not actually letting these guys go, so they can't take their own bump, and they just fall right on their head. But I hate seeing stuff like that. I'm amazed that both guys. I mean, Taven got up and just did the next spot they were supposed to do, and Diablo Roja, they just went straight to the finish, but he was fine afterwards. And if you watch that, it's hard to figure out how, aside from, man, these guys, they're lucky they do neck exercises.
Yeah, with Taven, I figured it was some sort of language thing. Like maybe he told him bump out and, he bumped in or something. When it happened with Niebla, I was like, well, that's not language. So, yeah, I think you're doing something wrong here. But I thought, for me, like seeing Taven down there, I think he was one of the most successful guys. For me, at least, I don't know if you can remember anybody else, but in recent memory, I think he had the most successful run down there. He just seemed to connect with the crowd like really quickly, and they seemed to remember him the second time around he came down there.
Yeah, I would say so. I think the only person who did better than him is, as a foreigner, is not even an ROH guy, because I think it would be Michael Elgin.
Oh, yeah.
Because Elgin got really over, but in terms of pure ROH guys, I would say, for sure, Taven's your guy. I mean, and then on the flip side, I would say, I don't know, it's tough because I think Dragon Lee's really over with the ROH crowd, but he hasn't really gotten to do anything. That's the thing. Like, he's just been a special attraction guy.
Yeah, I mean, I was there when he was in the TV title match, which I thought was a really good spot for him. But yeah, no, it's they're not having anyone connect. And listen, I don't know what the deal is and how the talent works out, but to me, it also would make. I mean, Sam Adonis would be somebody who would connect with the crowd a little bit easier because at least he can really cut a promo if they needed him to. So that's an option that hasn't been used yet. Maybe this year they see that, but part of me feels like they're bringing either UG or the bigger names or guys with masks who can do something spectacular. So I don't know if we're ever gonna see him up there.
No, but I don't know who. Let's say if I had to pick 3 guys that you enjoy the most right now, this like not the past when you started, just right now, this current day CMLL, who would be your top 3 guys or girls?
Ooh, okay, so number 1 is Echiseto.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if so. Full disclosure, I've also started to read more in Spanish, and I randomly picked up Ursula Le Guin's like Mage of Terramar, and I found it in Spanish, so I've been reading it. And he's described, the main character is Echiseto. So I saw the name, I saw the word in the book, and I had seen him, and I like the little when he comes out with the flaming rocks and everything, and he's really good too. So it kind of, at first it was one of those things where the name recognition was just what got me, but then when I started watching him more, I really enjoy him.
Before you go on, can I just interrupt you for 1 sec?
Sure.
Most people don't know this, but CML actually has someone on staff who is there to help wrestlers with their characters and personalities. And it was that person who actually got Hechicero into doing those tricks with the stones and the fire and everything. And Hechicero liked it so much, he actually, on his own, went to take like very amateur lessons for a magician, so his tricks could be more cool when he comes out and everything. And I think that's the thing that people wouldn't expect from a very old school traditional promotion like CMLL. But they do encourage it. They want their guys to have like personalities and gimmicks that stands out. And I think it's good the way you just described it. Like with Hechicero, his entrance really makes him stand out. So I hope more wrestlers put the time and effort that he did into it to follow in his path and have their own characters, because your wrestling will only take you so far as your personality needs to accentuate it.
Oh yeah, he's definitely my number 1. Let me see. Now you're putting me in a tough spot. I mean, we were talking earlier. I've really liked Soberano Jr.'s work as of late. He's really exciting. Then who else? I mean, since he's been unmasked, and he kind of went with the He-Man Lagunero. Niebla Roja to me is completely different and much more appealing. Since he's kind of embraced being a technical completely. And I guess the third guy...
You just said 3.
Oh, yeah, I did. Oh, I'm going to sneak in Odaz. Has really been impressing me lately. Him and Virus together have been great. So I'm excited to see him do a lot more. How about you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Odaz has got a bright future. For me... Well, number 1 is always, Volador Jr. is my favorite guy. I love watching him. I think he's just one of the most exciting wrestlers in the world. So he's definitely all the way at the top. Number 2, I've always had a thing for the midgets, or I don't know if that's the right word. Maybe let's go with minis, just to be appropriate. I love minis, and the smaller they are, but not in a way where they're just comedy. Like Kimonito, he's adorable, but he's just comedy.
Yeah.
But my number 2 would be Micro Man, because not only is he comedy, he can work.
Yeah, he's amazing. It's crazy.
He's like a revel. I don't understand why he's not a bigger deal amongst the hardcore internet wrestling fans, because he works so hard, he's so entertaining, and he's definitely going to get ripped off this year by not being the Observer Rookie of the Year, even though he is, but I digress. And number 3, I'm going to go with Puma, because I think Puma King is just so misused in CMLL. He falls right into like the second or third matches where you hardly notice him against much weaker competition, but he's so talented and he's got his gimmick down. He got so over in Japan, and I just wish they would do more with him. He's just so much fun to watch. I see a guy with the world of potential who's just being wasted away. And I hate watching stuff like that, but for me, watching him, there's always something new, and it's always a guy who's trying so hard.
Man, I mean, him and Templario are two guys that I think are being misused a bit, and I just don't understand why they're not being put up against, I don't know, guys who are ready to really go out there, because you put out some of the shows and it seems that you'll have a trio of Technicos that looks fantastic, but then the opposing Rudos are just flat and not really up to snuff with these guys.
It's a big problem in CMLL. Their mid card, their second, third match, fourth match Rudos are all older guys who don't want to work as hard, who resent the young guys coming in. So it's hard for the young guys to really look good. That's why a guy like Audaz looks amazing so far, because he's working with Virus, who's the consummate professional. And one guy who stands out to me, I don't know about you, the name might not stick to you right away, but Iago? Have you seen his entrances lately?
Oh, he came out as am I crazy, like Chainsaw Massacre kind of guy, a couple weeks, like 2 months ago or something like that, right?
Yeah, every time he comes out, it's a different. One time he did that. This past, I think it was Friday, he came out where somebody wheeled him to the ring. Yeah. He was in a wheelbarrow, and he came out wearing this like crazy outfit with like a monster with these arms, and you don't expect that in general in CMLL, let alone from an opening match guy. Where, I mean, every opening match you watch in CMLL is just guys walking to the ring and just coming in their own way. Like Templario does a space flying tiger drop to enter the ring off the ramp. But nobody comes out like Iago. He's got this whole thing behind him where he cosplays. Is that the word, cosplay?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he has all these characters, and that's really going to benefit him, I think, going forward in the future, because I could see that being a thing that definitely gets over, and not to mention he's a great wrestler.
Oh, no, yeah, he's fantastic, and it's all about the pomp and circumstance, a lot of times with these guys, and guys like Echiseto and Iago really go that extra mile to, and I'm not going to lie, I love Cranio's entrance. I mean, to dancing to Gangnam Style, when Mihei's under him, like on the floor, it just that to me. Listen, say what you want about Cranio, but that entrance to me wins me over every time I see him come out. It's amazing.
One of my suggestions to CMLL, I mean, when I say suggestions, I mean I mentioned it to somebody who works in CMLL, but these suggestions never go anywhere, obviously, because CMLL is very closed and shut in and old school. But I suggested, like, if you're airing these shows on YouTube, designed to get people outside of Mexico watching, why don't you have an English feed? So next time Cranio comes out dancing with Mija, somebody can be there to explain what's going on. Like, because somebody new watching that, it's just their mind's going to be blown. Like, what is this? And at least somebody in English could put a little bit of context to it, because that all started, the whole outfit started from their time in AAA. Of course, you can't mention AAA on CML, but that they would dress up like Yoda and what's the guy's name from Star Wars?
Vader? Or
Vader. Who does Cranio dress up as? He comes out as
I guess it's kind of Darth Vader-ish, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why they would dress like that. And the Gangnam Style is just because that's the dance. That it's just what they do. But I mean, even if you have somebody in English just saying that, it kind of helps more to explain why this little dude and this giant fat man in a suit are suddenly dancing to the song that went out of style like 5 years ago.
That's amazing because I just liked the dance. I didn't need to know any of the background. I was like, the fact that the song is from like 5 or 6 years ago is what made me laugh even harder. I was like, this is so random, and I can't believe they're still dancing to this. That it actually made me like them right away.
Sombra's CML team used to be this rap song. I'm not really a rap guy, but he used to use the song by Nelly, I think it was. But it was a song that was popular in like 2007, 2008, and he's still coming out to it up until the days where he became an ingobernable in like 2014.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, listen, Rob, thank you so much for joining tonight. Do you have any plugs? I mean, I know you mentioned the high spots again, but you can do it properly altogether.
Yeah, no, thank you for giving me this short 1 hour window where I could be positive and we could actually talk about things we like for a change, considering, you know, we're not overanalyzing things, we're just having fun, or I felt like I had fun.
No, me too.
And, yeah, plug-wise, I mean, of course, it's February, so we're almost at April. I'd be remiss not plugging that High Spots is going to be presenting WrestleCon at WrestleMania weekend. Thursday, before WrestleMania, show's going to start late. It's going to be at 9:30, but you can get all the information going to WrestleCon.com, checking out the Twitter. We just announced yesterday the main event. It's going to be Lovers versus Friends. Kenny Omega, Kota Ibushi against Trent and Chuck Taylor, Chucky T, whatever you want to call him. I think it'll be great. We've got a ton of surprises for the card. We haven't announced any other matches except that one yet, but we have announced talent that's going to be appearing. The Lucha Brothers are going to be there. Flamita's going to be there. I promise you there's going to be something for everybody on the show, and people are going to be buzzing afterwards, some of the surprise appearances we have planned. And if you don't have time to come to the show, we're going to be there all weekend. There's going to be a convention. Have you ever been to WrestleMania weekend, Rich?
I have. So, you know, since I've been covering like closely in terms of indie stuff, I actually have not. The last Mania I went to was WrestleMania 29 in New York, but my eyes weren't open yet. So I'm actually feeling a little jealous right now because hearing the announcement and people have told me, and I'm not just doing this because you're here talking to me and you're affiliated with High Spots. Like, people have told me how fun WrestleCon is, and I really want to go. Like, I want to go just so I can go to WrestleCon and then not go to Mania because I don't want to be at a show for 12 hours.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I would definitely suggest somebody to do it once in their life just to see what it's like. I mean, if you have the stomach to take in 3 or 4 straight days of wrestling, it's so much fun. But even if you don't even like the wrestling part of it, the convention part is fun. Just meeting the wrestlers, getting autographs, and hanging out with fellow wrestling fans. You have to do it next year because I'm going to be there. And since we're not going to get a chance to meet in Mexico this month, I mean, that would be our next chance, ideally, I think, to meet up, unless I'm ever in your area. Of course, I'll hit you up, but definitely consider it. I mean, if people want to reach me on the internet, I'm on Twitter as Rob Viper. I'm on Instagram as RobViper13, where you can see the face behind the guy who tweets a lot of stuff. And you can follow my Mexican adventures. I'm going to Mexico next month for the CMLL Big Show. And the next day I'm going to northern Mexico, to Saltillo, where I've never been before. So I usually post videos of shows I've been to, pictures. I mean, and if you ever need help, if anybody listening to this is ever going down to Mexico, feel free to contact me. I can help you out. I can show you point you in the right direction, things to do, helpful tips. I may not come off as it on Twitter, but I am a nice guy who's very helpful.
Certainly, I mean, I can vouch for the fact that I've reached out to you directly and asked you about things, when I don't want to tweet them out and be embarrassed because I don't know something, and you've always been more than forthcoming.
I try my best, and I would encourage everybody, just like to go to WrestleCon weekend, to go down to Mexico once in your life, just to experience a Friday night in Arena Mexico. I mean, Rich, you're going to get yours in about 8 days from now. The Sunday show will be cool. The Tuesday show will be cool. But I assure you, Friday night with all the buzz that goes on outside Arena Mexico, I mean, everybody should see that at least once. And your only costs really are the flights, because everything in Mexico is dirt cheap. You can get in to see a Friday night Arena Mexico show for literally $5.
It's crazy. I had to do a double take. The book that they're selling is like it's like double or 3 times the amount of a front row seat.
Yep.
It's kind of crazy to me.
It's insane. Like, when people talk to me about going to Mexico, and I'm like, yeah, once you get past the whole flight and the lodging, depending if you want to stay in a hotel or you want to get a B&B or whatever, or an Airbnb, after that, your costs are literally nothing. Even buying merchandise outside, I remember, like, my friends would tell me, oh, no, don't buy that. That's expensive. And I would ask, well, how expensive? And they would say, like, oh, it's like 250 pesos, which is really only like a couple bucks. Everything is, for them, it's expensive. But for a foreigner, it's amazing. Like, you're going to lose your mind when you're shopping before Arena Mexico outside. Try not to spend too much money. That's my only warning to you.
I do have a limit. I already pre-purchased some styrofoam heads to throw my masks on. So I'm going to have some friends for Hechicero when I come back, I hope.
Excellent. And I hope you do a podcast with your experiences.
Oh, certainly, man. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, once again, thanks to Rob Viper for joining us, and looking forward to having other chats. If you guys are somebody who are interested in talking about the things you love about wrestling, please reach out to us. You can send us an email at runningwildpodcast@gmail.com. You can send us a DM or a tweet over at runningwildlwos, or you can follow me directly on Twitter and message me at rich_LACONI. And we'll get back to you and set something up. Because, as much as and I think one of the things that Rob and I talked about is we do this, we analyze, we criticize because we love it, And sometimes we get away from that because I think a lot, the news is in being critical. And maybe the news is not in sitting here for an hour and talking about everything we love. But, it's still, I think at the end of the day, we all love wrestling.
Right, and that was something that, I wanted to mention when we were going over the Honor Rising cards. Is like, I'm frustrated because I've been watching it forever, and I enjoy it, and I have such high hopes for it. That when it's not doing itself any favors, it's like you get frustrated, because this is something that I've invested years in, and a company that we were going to when it wasn't the biggest company in the world, and to see where it is now, you don't want to see it take a step backwards, or you want to see it continue to grow and continue to build their own guys. So that's where a lot of, like you said, a lot of the criticism and that stuff comes from a place of love and a place of passion. So that's never a bad thing.
Well said, sir. So just before we get out of here, just want to remind you that we're brought to you in partnership with pwpartners.com, ROHworld.com, and LastWordOnProWrestling.com, and we're featured on the Wrestling to the Max network. Thank you guys for joining us this week. Well,
the longest running podcast in podcast history.
This might be the longest. We are, as I listen to other wrestling podcasts, they're like, oh, we're at episode 70. I'm like laughing. I'm
I just meant stat-wise. The longest podcast.
Oh no, Statwife. This might be the longest podcast ever. Bruce Mitchell, watch out. This might top the charts.
Okay.
But just want to remind you guys that you've been listening to the podcast that is just too sweet.
For Rich and Runz, this is the host of Ring of Honor Wrestling, Ian Riccaboni, signing off. Be sure to join them next week for another episode of the Running Wild Podcast.